Hi everyone, it's Jessica and I am excited for mystery envelope time once again with my friends in the Makers with Heart group. So this month it was actually my turn to send out the mystery envelope to everyone. And these are the pieces and the rules that I sent out. I included 2 4x6 pieces of cardstock, some melon dots, and then a piece of white daisy cut into the fancy doily, the small one. The colors here are melon, which is the new color of the year for Close to My Heart, and honey butter. So since it is National Stamping Month in September, my thought for the rules this month would be that we could add in additional papers based on how many stamps we used, how many different stamp sets we use. So if you use, let's say, 3 different stamp sets, then you could bring in 3 additional papers. I said that neutral colors were freebies, so this is just any extra colored cardstock or pattern paper. So I'm going to use white daisy as my neutral, and then I've got this really pretty yellow floral paper from the Flower Shop collection. And then I pulled in, this is my only patterned melon color paper that I have. It's from actually the Halloween collection called Fabulous. And so I think I'm going to use those, but then just to kind of cut down on some of that orange and yellow, I'm going to also use some Glacier cardstock. So by my count at this point, I have 3 extra pieces of paper that that means I need to have 3 different stamp sets. So I cut this Fabulous paper to 7 by 12, and the yellow floral paper, I cut it 3.5 by 12. And just in my head, what I'm thinking I might do is to do a little something like this, and then to kind of break up that transition between the 2 pattern papers with a strip of Glacier cardstock. I printed these photos. These are actually of my daughter, Hadley, sleeping in her bed. And when I took them, I had wanted to kind of capture the memory of how she has to sleep with 10,000 stuffed animals, and she's just kind of this really crazy sleeper. So I had printed them at 3 by 4, but that one just really wasn't working for me in the different orientation. So I decided to print just the one as a 4 by 6 instead. The other thing that I did off camera was I took that yellow honey butter paper and I cut just a little bit of the edge of I don't know what you would call that, one of those like fancy square bracket kind of looks. I cut that on my Cricut at 11 inches. So I'm just cutting down my other pieces of paper as well. And then I think I'm going to create like a little thing that I'm going to sit on top of the white daisy. That's my thought. So I do want to edge distress these with some ink first, and normally I just swipe my ink pad across the side of the paper. That's the typical way that I do it. But because I have those little curves and the points on my honey butter pattern paper, I thought it would be easier to get into those nooks and crannies right here with my foam tool instead. So I decided to edge distress my papers that way. It does give a different look. It's much softer to edge distress your papers with ink using a foam tool as opposed to just doing direct ink pad to paper. So that's why I did all of them in the same manner. And then now what I'm going to do is kind of put this whole little piece together before I put it down onto my white daisy. So I just kind of cut a little notch out of each side there because it does curve up, and I figured I'd have to trim a little something there anyway. So I want to make sure I get this on straight. I was not entirely sure how to go about doing this when I kind of cut it all out and everything, but this seemed to work pretty well. I just gave myself a little bit of overlap so that I could run some adhesive back there. And then, like I said, I had kind of cut those little notches out of each of those bottom corners so that way you couldn't see where they transitioned. And then I'm going to put that little 1/2-inch strip of Glacier cardstock just across the top to kind of act as that, I don't know, like the stopping point between the 2 pattern papers. Just like I said, I felt like there was a lot of orange and yellow going on, and I really wanted to bring in another color. And in my photos, I know you can't see it very well, but there are lots of colors going on in my photo, and definitely like bits of that blue. So I thought that they all kind of worked pretty nicely together. All right, so now I'm going to put this here on my white daisy. I do end up actually sliding it all the way flush up to the top later, but for right now, this is kind of what I was thinking. Now, I cut a lot of this out because this is the point where I really started fussing a lot with the placement of my photos. I am not following a pattern or like, an inspiration layout that I found on Pinterest or anything. I am just working straight out of my head, and there's a reason why I like to follow patterns or inspiration pieces, because this process does not work so well for me. I struggled big time. I moved things around. Like I said, I reprinted that one photo to 4x6, which definitely helped, but I just really was not sure how I wanted to lay all of these out. Then I came up with the idea of, the one photo is very similar to the other one. So I'm going to use a 3x4 flip flap. And that way I just really have to have two of them here on my layout, and the other one can be tucked behind. So I'll show you that part in a little bit later. All right, now I did mat my photos in that honey butter cardstock that I had included in the mystery envelope. And I did have to bring in an extra piece to get both of my photos. So now I'm up to 4 stamps. And an additional rule that I had given for this month's mystery challenge was to bring in some older stamp sets. That was kind of an optional one, but I said, hey, it is National Stamping Month. Like, can you bring in something old from your stash? And so I went through my stash and I actually pulled out some of my very first close to my heart stamps that I ever bought. A really, really long time ago. I want to say it was probably around 2007, I think, is when I first discovered Close to My Heart and fell in love. And so these two right here, the Playful Flourishes and the Cottage Floral stamp set, were the very first two that I ever bought. In fact, I was laughing to myself because I still had my maiden name written in Sharpie ink on the outside of the envelope. And then I pulled these ones as well. This one I use all the time. It never leaves my desk. And then this alphabet set, because I'm going to try to work some of those in as well. And I was trying to figure out how old these stamp sets were. So I found my 2 oldest idea books from 2007 and 2008. And let me just say, it was kind of a hoot going through them. And I'm like, oh, look, I have that stamp set. It was just really funny to kind of go back and find some of the things from your stash and then look at the old catalogs that they originally came from. So that part was a lot of fun for me in this mystery envelope challenge. Okay, like I said, I am going to add my one extra photo through the use of a flip flap. So I'm just kind of looking here. Yep, I like to attach it to my page. So what I'm going to do before I get any of that glued down, I am going to stamp some of those Playful Flourishes behind where they're going to be, where those photos are going to be. And then that way I can go ahead and get my flip flap stuck down. I figured it was probably easier to do this step first and then to have it glued down and try to mask off everything. So I'm going to add another one. I'm going to turn it upside down and add one over here to this side. Honestly, this didn't end up being my favorite part of the layout, but I was trying to use the older stamps and, hit a certain number because that's how many pieces of extra paper I had brought in. And otherwise, I probably wouldn't really have stamped those flourishes coming out from the side. Didn't love that part, but it is what it is. All right, so on a flip flap, if you've never used one before, there is a little adhesive strip that you can pull off. And I just put my photo in there so that I can kind of get an idea of placement and making sure that it's lined up with my other one. And those adhesive strips are very, very sticky. So it's not going to come back up once you put it down. So I do take my time and go slowly on this part, just because I know once I set it down onto that paper, it's not going to move. And so then I'm just burnishing it with my finger to make sure that it's down really well. And I actually had accidentally put the wrong photo in there, so I'm going to switch that over. That's the one that I want to be on the top, so it'll look like this. And then now I can adhere this one to the bottom of the page. So I just kind of hold it there for a second and make sure that I got it lined up and And that's that. They're really easy and fast to use. Okay, so now I'm gonna go to that old cottage floral stamp set. Pretty sure this is the very first one I ever bought. And I'm going to create a couple of flowers that I can use as an embellishment for my page. So I don't have the melon ink pad yet to go along with my melon paper that I'm using. So I decided to do everything with papaya, and I thought that the papaya worked really well with that melon color. It's just a shade darker, and I thought that it was really pretty. So I'm stamping here with papaya and honey butter and glacier and just kind of making a bunch of flowers off of this stamp set. It was a lot of fun to play with this one. I don't know, there's a reason that we buy these stamps, right? It's because we love them, and I never get rid of any of the ones that I have ever bought. I just keep collecting them, and I figured there's a reason I buy them. It's because I want to use them. And so it was nice to kind of get into that stash and use them again. All right, I'm actually going to cut that doily in half so that I can have just a little bit of it peeking out from underneath my floral cluster here. And then I'm going to layer them up like so, and then I will adhere those down off camera using a combination of tape runner and then regular foam tape and then thin 3D foam tape. So that way they're all kind of stacked up at varying heights. And then I'm going to tuck the other half of that doily up here to create the second point of my visual triangle. And then I did have those melon dots that I sent in the mystery envelope, so I'm using some of them as the centers of my flower here. One of the rules I said is that if you used all of the melon dots in the envelope, then you could bring in any other embellishment that you wanted. And I had thought that maybe I would use something else, but in the end I just ended up using the melon dots. So I put a little one down in the bottom. And now what I'm going to do is using that alphabet stamp set. It's called the Framework Alphabet. And again, another one that I've had in my stash for quite a while. I'm going to stamp out the word dream. And I'm using some sapphire ink here. So the title for my page is going to be, What Do I Dream About? Because that's what my daughter says to me every night when I'm tucking her into bed. I have to come up with, something crazy like swimming with mermaids or flying through the clouds with unicorns. I don't know. And before she'll go to bed. So she always wants to know what to dream about. And that was part of the reason, like I said, I took these photos. I just wanted to kind of capture some of those fun everyday memories about, what it's like for her to go to bed and having all 10,000 stuffed animals packed around her in her bed and the things she says. And so that's the memory I'm hoping to record here. All right, pulling in yet another stamp set so that I can make sure that I've used enough to justify all of my different papers. That one there is another oldie, and I never ever take it off of my desk. I use it for stamping dates, for stamping my journal lines. That one has been just a really big favorite of mine over the years. And then this is actually a new stamp set. This was the background elements, and I used that one a couple of times actually on this page. And whoops, I'm almost putting my photo in upside down. Oh, flip it around, Jessica. I used it there just to kind of give a little interest behind where my journal lines go. And then I am going to use it later also over my title because I thought it just looked a little plain down there. So I'm just kind of counting to myself to make sure I've got, I had 4 pieces of paper. So I've got at least 4 different stamps that I've used. In fact, I think I used more than that. So I'm good to go as far as that's concerned. I'm going to add in the rest of my melon dots here. And I'm going to put the other 3 that I had in the mystery envelope down here by my title. Later, I'm like, that means I have them in 2 different spots. I need to have them in a 3rd spot for my visual triangle. So I did go back into my stash and get out some more melon dots, but I didn't add any other embellishments like the rules said that I could once I had used those up. So I'm going to stamp that here, stamp that there, put that down here, just kind of scattering them around. I like that they come in 3 different sizes. I think that's visually pleasing to the eye. Okay, and so now, I'm going to add some more up there once I find where I have put them, where they've run away to in my craft room. At this point, I think I'm done, except then I sit and I look at it for a minute, and then I'm like, no, I think I'm not done. I need to do a little something else. I wasn't loving all of that extra white space. Here you can see where I did use that one background element stamp set to kind of stamp over my title. I used this one here, and I did second generation of glacier ink. But like I said, I wasn't loving all of that white space, and I thought, well, this would probably be a good spot to do some splatters or something, but I just was a little nervous to do that at this point and maybe mess it up. So what I decided to do was to cut just an extra 1/4 inch off of my paper. So I'm going to do 1/8 from the right side and the left side each, and then 1/4 off the bottom. And then I'm going to just mat it on this piece of sapphire cardstock. And I thought that that kind of helped, I don't know, all that white down at the bottom was kind of bothering me. And as soon as I matted it on the sapphire cardstock, I thought that it looked much better. So I gutted out that sapphire cardstock off camera, and that way I could save a whole bunch of it. And now I am done. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. I apologize if the lighting or even the lighting in my photos is a little dark. I did have to create this in the evening on a rainy day, and normally I try to do it when the sun is out. So hopefully it was bright enough for you to see. Make sure that you check out my friends in the Makers with Heart group, because they got that same envelope full of supplies. And I do love seeing how everybody takes the same products and uses them in totally different ways. All right, guys, thank you so much for stopping by today to watch. I hope you enjoyed. Have a wonderful day. Happy crafting. Bye.